So we got to get right to it, Morgan. Ukraine stories.
Well, and I had a few because we were just talking about how much we want to send. We want to send $33 billion, or your president, Joe Biden, wants to send $33 billion over to Ukraine for government salaries and pensions. The pensions, talk about a kleptocracy, but let's talk about what else we're doing with the war. Because we've got here, we've got some stories that came out. The Ukrainian government has finally admitted that Ghost of Kiev story, if you remember that's the fighter pilot, the heroic fighter pilot that shot down 40 Russian fighter jets, the Ghost of Kiev. And then, remember, they found out, the video of that came out of a video game. So, it probably wasn't real. I don't know. And there's a Ghost of Kiev, and he's just like all Ukrainians fighting with all their heart. Well, now the government of Ukraine's finally come out and admitted there was no Ghost of Kiev, but they said the Ghost of Kiev is the spirit, the Ukrainian fighting spirit. That's what we were talking about. When we told you there was a real person who was pulling this off, shooting down all these Russian planes. So you can't trust what's coming out of the Ukrainian government. That should be pretty obvious. And in the meantime, I've ran across a couple of stories, and we're just going to be able to pay a little bit of mention to them. But the U.S. is apparently training Ukrainian forces in Germany. And in the story, it talks about the Florida National Guard is involved in that. And there are 5 states whose National Guard units are turning over armored personnel carriers as part of an $800 million military aid package to Ukraine. But our National Guard's over there training them to shoot these various howitzers and other types of weapons that we're shipping them. And
that's news to me. And if they're I knew that they sent our M777s, which is the howitzer that I work on with the National Guard. And that's now news to me that they're sending people, because none of my unit's been asked to do that, and we're the only 777 unit in the state of Florida.
Well, you got to check this out. TheDrive.com is pretty good stuff on the war effort. Ukraine Situation Report. U.S. is training Ukrainians in Germany. And Slick, you could understand why they wouldn't want to publish this, right? But this information is getting out there. So what are we doing? Then I come across another story. And again, I'm only going to be able to pay a little bit of mention to this, but this is a pattern. And I'm trying to call your attention to it because the corporate media won't put these pieces together for you, that we're actually already at war with Russia in Ukraine, if you want to read between the lines. And the pattern is, or the story that fits the pattern is one, again, out of the Daily Mail. It says former U.S. Marine 22, and that's an important age, 22, is killed while fighting in Ukraine. Private security contractor from New York leaves behind wife and 7-month-old as heartbroken family issues plea for return of his body. And they go on and on to talk about other innocent people who've been killed in Ukraine. But look, here's a former U.S. Marine. And by the way, if he joined the Marines at 18, he was probably in for 4 years. So he must have just gotten out of the Marine Corps. And may be possible to join for less than 4 years, but I believe 4 years is the standard minimum active duty contract. He would still technically be on inactive ready reserve for 2 years at the end of his contract. And here he is at age 22 fighting in the Ukraine for a private security contractor. What are we doing sending private security contract forces over? And that's the way we fight wars in a lot of places. In Syria, that's the way we did it in Iraq in a lot of instances, and other places. So what are we doing? Now, you read that in context with House Republican, which shouldn't even be called a Republican, but Adam Kinzinger, a true sellout, if ever there was a sellout. He has now introduced an authorization for use of military force in the U.S. Congress to try to allow your president, Joe Biden, to actually go to war against Russia over Ukraine. The authorization for use of military force does not terminate until your president, Joe Biden, quote, certifies to Congress that the territorial integrity of Ukraine has been restored. Meanwhile, all these guys in Congress don't give a flying flip about the territorial integrity of the United States or our southern border. But let's send your sons and daughters, let's send your tax money that we took out of your earnings, let's send all that over to Ukraine to pay their government salaries. Let's send your sons and daughters to die over there. Let's go to war with Russia. Let's get into a nuclear war because, hey, why not? It's got to do something, right? It's going to be fun, right? Fun? I don't think so. These people are being reckless with this situation, are absolutely reckless with this situation. We ought to be staying as far away as we can from any kind of direct involvement. And I just shared with you a couple of stories that show that we're pretty darn close to direct involvement. You combine that with all the arms that we're sending and probably all the things that we don't even know about, and we're basically fighting a proxy war against Russia in Ukraine, and that was probably our plan from the get-go, was to do another Afghanistan-style proxy war. And I don't mean when we were in Afghanistan. I mean when Russia was in Afghanistan in the late 70s and early 80s, and how we kind of drew them in and we armed the Mujahideen to fight against them. And that's the same thing we want to do in Ukraine, and just wear them down. And again, this is all happening on purpose. These are not accidents, and it's all part of a strategy. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.